Come get me. Here we go. Well,
welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with acclaimed jazz pianist and vocalist Eric Byrd. We get into his new 2025 CD, Echoes of Arrival, his life in jazz, and the trio. For 25 years, the Eric Byrd Trio, or EBT, has brought the spirit of swing, bebop, gospel, and the blues to audiences worldwide. Winners of the Maryland State Arts Council Independent Artist Award, the trio has also received a governor's citation from Larry Hogan honoring 20 years of global performances. Eric has been playing professionally for nearly 30 years, along with the principles of swing and bebop, rousing gospel-tinged chords, and thrilling blues lines. They are fundamental elements of his performance style, and the crowds always respond. He is a Grammy Award voter and has performed with the likes of Wynton Marsalis, Chick Corea, Mike Stern, Randy Brecker, Warren Wolf, Charlie Byrd, and so many others. We get into his career and beyond. Enjoy this interview.
Oh, great, man. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we get into Echoes of Arrival, I want to know, first and foremost, 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, changing so much, especially with musicians. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you do things and create and live today?
That's a good question. Let's see. How did we get through the era? Well, the band at that point had been together about 20 years, and so we kind of rededicated ourselves to trying to stay as active as we could. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to say, well, while everybody else is inactive, let's practice, rehearse, and let's make a new record. So that way they gave us something to shoot for. So we started putting together the 20 record, which is the record before this one. And that was really nice because we recorded 10 songs that we had never recorded before. We took 10 songs that were already in our catalog and we kind of remixed them, revamped them. And that gave us something kind of to shoot for. So we would get together in my house, wearing masks, trying to do as much social distancing as we could, but putting the music together. And we actually recorded a whole record in the pandemic. So that's how we kind of did that. And I forget the other question. The other question you had was, how does it change? Well, it made us realize that we weren't going back to the way society was before. If that makes any sense. Coming out of the pandemic, attention spans are a little shorter. People are not reluctant, but people don't plan in advance like they used to. Like you used to be able to have a gig in 2 months and ticket sales would be ticking all the way up until 2 months. Now people kind of wait 2, 3, 4 weeks before the event, before they commit to something. Live stream is a great tool, but there are some people that have gotten used to, well, I don't have to go to the gig. I can maybe, if a club has a live stream option, I'll just buy that. So we're not knocking any of those things, but it just caused us to think about business a little bit differently. And so we're trying to do what everybody else is doing, which is trying to keep our music relevant and as tied to the times that we're living in, like everybody else. Jazz is always, I guess, going to be kind of on the fringe. It's never really going to be mainstream music anymore, and I'm okay with that. But there's still an audience for this music, and so how do we wed our sense of tradition and the genre and where we come from and our point of reference with, what kids today or younger generations are kind of wanting to hear in their entertainment value. So all of that stuff is, kind of an ongoing process.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about Echoes of Arrival. What was kind of the vision, the idea that you were going after?
Yeah, well, we found ourselves about 18 months ago needing a bass player. We were no longer playing with our bass player that had been with us for 23 years. And so we were just kind of looking for direction because with only 3 voices in the band, and that table leg, those three legs have got to be pretty strong. And so we found this kid on bass that is really special. He's really a special talent, a unique talent. And so once we started playing with him, and once we kind of got through, I guess, the feeling out process. We got through the dating process. Then it just became obvious where it's like, well, I'd like to document where we are as quickly as I can because we're just excited by what he brings to the table. So Echoes is kind of a snapshot of where the band was and is over the last sort of 18 months. And Echoes has got a little bit of who I am throughout the whole thing. I really like kind of the modern contemporary jazz approach. And so you'll hear that in Silver and Goldie and Blues for JC, that kind of thing. But I also love just good old-fashioned swing, bluesy kind of stuff. So you'll hear that on Friday Night at Westminster Church and, the vocal, the Nat Cole thing, Yes, Sir, That's My Baby. Very much influenced by the Wynton Marsalis Quartet. Love that band, love everything that they do. Really like the way they approach ballads occasionally, how they play ballads that are kind of void of time. It's more they play ballads sometimes kind of phrase to phrase, and the time is very elastic. So we tried that with What Are You Doing the Rest of Your Life? So it's kind of just a snapshot of where we are. I think it's a springboard for where we're going. This kid on bass has inspired Al and I to go in directions, a little bit deeper into directions we hadn't really thought of before. And so, because he's young and he has a young person's vantage point. He's not just a jazz head. He plays in other groups like Kenyatta the Band. That's way more contemporary than what I do. And so he brings a nice vantage point to the band. So all of that stuff is kind of valuable. And Echoes is just kind of where we are right now.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
I hope they enjoy it. I hope it has an entertainment value. No matter how deep you try to make jazz or your art or music or your playing or whatever that stuff. I mean, Miles Davis made people feel good with his music. Ella Fitzgerald had people feel good with her music. So you kind of want to have an entertainment value. I think there's something on here for the casual fan. There's something on here for the jazz head. There's something on here for, different demographics of listeners in jazz. So I hope that they enjoy the artistry. I hope they enjoy the musicianship. I don't really know what to say about it other than, it was recorded in 2 days. The vocals are live right there, done right, me sitting at the piano singing right in the moment. So what the listener is hearing when they hear the record is somebody singing in tune, playing the piano solos, no overdubs, no auto-tune, no fixing. All the cracks and whistles and all that stuff is, right there in the moment. And so hopefully an audience is taking away that this is a band that is an actual working, viable, active band. We don't come together to make a record. We're constantly creative and working together. And so hopefully the audience comes away with a band kind of a concept. I don't know if that makes sense, but,
yeah.
There's some great music out there, but they're not a band. The drummer and the bass player, they're talented enough or they can hire anybody in the world to work with them. And so Al and Will and I, we really want people to hear that this is a band. There's an interplay. There's a silent communication that's going on. There's a lot of giggles, a lot of laughing that's going on behind the scenes of what's going on. And, all of that stuff, man. I hope I'm not being long-winded or loquacious. No. I hope I'm answering your question.
No, man, that was brilliantly put. I love what you said. So Because I do feel like that's the idea of a really good jazz outfit, is that you feel it's a band. You feel that
Yeah.
frivolity. You feel like when I saw Count Basie this April come to Kansas City, that
Oh wow, yeah.
you could feel the room
Yes.
change because of the energy and the
That's right.
love that they had for the traditions and to give music to the fans.
Yeah, and let me, while we're there, I've seen that Basie band at Blues Alley here in DC. Yeah, same kind of thing. I've gotten the opportunity to hang out with Branford a little bit. I wouldn't call us friends or contemporaries or peers at all, but he's just been very gracious to me whenever he comes to town. And when those four guys enter a room, it's just different.
Yeah.
It's just different. Like there's nothing against anybody else, and I've been able to see a lot of great. But you can tell that not only is the musicianship high, but they're a band. Like they're a freaking band, and they come in and they play the paint off the walls, and then they'll break your heart with a beautiful ballad, and then they'll play something from the 1920s, and then they'll play 26-2 by John Coltrane. I mean, that's the kind of band I've always wanted to be in. I'm fortunate enough, I'm living I'm living a great life. The good Lord, the good Lord has been good to me, man. I've got the kids I've always wanted to have. I've got the wife I've always wanted to have. I've got the band I've always wanted to play in, man. I've got a band that, I want us to change the energy when we come in a room. Like anybody can play tunes and play it at a high level, but there's an interplay, especially between Alfonso and I. We're going into 25 years of being in a band together, man. And, that's a lot of mileage. That's a lot of time on the road. That's a lot of recordings. It's our 11th recording. We've been a band longer than Will's been alive, the new bass player. So he's fit in really well. And he, makes fun of our age all the time. But his instincts are really high. I mean, he's just a big sponge with a lot of chops. And so this is going to be the beginning of, I think, a really nice next chapter for the band.
Speaking of being together for a long time, you've been at this for 30 plus years. Take me back to your beginnings. Why did music, and more specifically jazz, evolve into this career?
Probably because of the mentors that I was turned on to. I never really thought of that. That's a good question. You're good. You're asking good stuff, man. Well,
Yeah.
To go all the way back, the 25 words or less version, which I'm not great at, as you probably figured out, Ray Charles made me a piano player. I saw Ray Charles on television, and I was like, ooh, I want to do that. And then I played classical music for a good decade, like elementary school through high school, and then just got a little bit into jazz. College is when I started to play jazz, like kind of for real. And then Miles Davis's Kind of Blue made me want to be a jazz musician. And so I think during my formative years, like as I was forming, what I liked about jazz and what I was listening to at the time, I was listening to guys that had bands. I was listening to the Miles Davis, the two great quintets he had. I was listening to the Bill Evans Trio. I was listening to, the Coltrane Quartet. I was listening to bands. So I think as I was growing up, as I was getting into jazz deeper into my late teens and early 20s, I think it was that band concept that really kind of stayed in my ear. And then there were two things that happened to me that knocked me on my butt. That happened around the same time. There was a guitar teacher at my college who told me, hey, the Mike Stern Bob Byrd band is coming to Baltimore. You should go check them out. And I never heard fusion jazz that loud with that kind of energy before. And I was like, wow, that's great. Because that was almost like a rock concert. A lot of people think jazz and they think like sleepy background kind of music. And that was in your face, loud, aggressive, and Stern and Berg and Dennis Chambers, Lincoln Goins, those guys had chops for days. And then Chick Corea, the great Chick Corea, came out with that acoustic band album. And in my mind, that acoustic band record with John Patitucci on bass and Dave Weckl on drums, to me, that was cream. That was Clapton, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce. That was three cats playing, you know, genitals to the wall,
Yep.
you know, aggressive music, but it was swinging and it was acoustic. And I thought, oh man, if I'm going to start a band, that's what I want to do. I want an acoustic band. And so I found the swinging bass player and drummer that would want to play with me, and the rest is history. And then we just kind of never really talked about it. We just kind of became a band, and I just loved the whole thing that went around that, the branding, the marketing, the everything that went along with that. We came up with a logo, you know, the whole thing, and just the branding of a band. You know, in jazz, there are not a lot of bands. You know, there's the Keith Jarrett Standards Trio that unfortunately is no longer active, but, you know, you have the Branford Quartet, you got the Bill Charlap Trio, but there's not a lot of bands. So I wanted to lean into the idea of, when you saw the name, the Eric Byrd Trio, you would think of three people and not just one. And that's kind of where I was going 25, 30 years ago. And we've been able to accomplish a lot with that brand.
So let me ask you this. Over your career, and you've mentioned some names of sharing the stage with Wynton Marsalis, Warren Wolf, you know, the list goes on. What have you learned from kind of the legendary luminaries that you've been on stage with that you pass along to younger cats?
Oh, man. A lot of stuff. Number one, the depth of the music. Like, you know, you go to Nashville, or you go to the South, or you go to like the hills of West Virginia, or even Pennsylvania, Western Maryland. You know, there's a tradition that comes with bluegrass, that these bluegrass musicians, you know, they honor and treasure that tradition. You know, there's a tradition that comes with the blues. You're in Kansas City, I guess. So, like,
yes,
there's a tradition that comes with the blues, man. You know, like, you know, you just don't pick up a guitar and start playing. That's great. But, like, you know, there's some Son House you got to deal with. There's some Muddy Waters you got to deal with. You know, there's a tradition. And the big thing that these guys really imparted to me is the tradition of it. I mean, they can talk for hours and hours about standards and gigs and, you know, club owners ripping them off, and funny stories about other legends that they played with, or clubs. And so to me, just honoring the ancestors and honoring the music is the big one. The other one is, and I don't know another way of saying it, but I've been using this lately with my students, like, you owe these guys, like, you owe the tradition, you owe these ancestors, like, your best. You know, you owe it to Muddy Waters to play the best. You owe it to Etta James to do it as best as you can. You owe it to, you know, Sarah Vaughan to sing as best as you can, because that's the tradition this stuff comes out of. And when you hang out with a Kurt Elling, he's really great to talk about the tradition, which you respect. You know, when you hang out with Jason Marsalis or something, he loves to talk about the tradition of his dad and, you know, where his dad came out of. So you want to honor those men and women as best you can. And then the other thing is that be a lifelong learner. Be a lifelong learner. Like, I would look at some of these people that I've been able to spend time with as masters, but they don't really look at themselves as masters of the music. I mean, I got a chance to hang out with Christian McBride. You know, Christian McBride, you know, he doesn't think of himself as a master. He thinks of himself as, I'm on to the next thing, and I'm learning music. I'm curious about music. I'm still asking questions. I love playing with people so that I can learn more every time I play. And, you know, that's a great thing. If you're a lifelong learner, that keeps you from being arrogant. You stay humble, and that's really important, I think.
So at the end of the day, what is it that you love the best about being a band leader and a professional musician?
I love the creative process. You know, making this record was the closest thing to playing a live gig in a recording situation I've ever had. It was great to be able to write a song, give it to two other guys that are better than you, They get to add their part to it and make it even better than what you thought. And then you go right into a studio, record it, and hopefully people enjoy it. You can't beat that, man. Like, that beats rush hour traffic on 495 in Washington, D.C. any day. The other thing is I get to sing a song that I heard Frank Sinatra sing, that I heard Nat King Cole sing, and so you're just a part of that lineage. You're a part of the thread of that big piece of fabric that goes, man, I'm a part of something bigger than myself. That's super great. Like, there's nothing better than that. And then probably the last thing is, just being a creative. I had a dad, God rest his soul, that was like, you can play music for a hobby, son, but you can't make that a living. Like, you got to get yourself a good job. You got to get one of those good government jobs, and now we look at our government and we say, wow, there are probably people in government wishing they could play the piano.
Yeah.
Because, I never get furloughed. I never get laid off. I never get my pay upended. Like, every day I get to play the piano. And that's amazing. I mean, you're a journalist. Every day you get to be creative. You get to use the language as a wordsmith to be able to craft a narrative that brings somebody closer to something that they might not give a rip about. There's going to be plenty of people that have never heard of Eric Byrd, but they know your work and they know that you're a good writer, and they'll go, well, I'll read the article because I know that this guy can. I mean, that's a powerful, creative, special thing that a lot of people wish they had and they don't. So as I get older, man, I try to just lean into those things that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful to have a band, grateful to play this music, grateful to be able to hang out with some cats that do it better than me, that have been doing it longer than me, that have been doing it on a higher level than me, and grateful to be able to record, grateful to be able to put music out. I haven't even told the band this, but I'm thinking about doing another record, man. I want to record and play as much as I can.
I love it, man. So at the end of the day, Eric, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Usually I pay somebody. I pay a therapist for this. But let's see. I think and I hope that people see a person of faith. I know that Christianity has been hijacked by our political discourse, which is a drag, which is a stone cold drag, because I know a lot of people that consider themselves, a faith kind of centered person, and they don't have any stake in any of the stuff any of this garbage that is getting headlines. I mean, I consider myself a person of faith, so I hope people see faith. That's why I've ended all of our records with a hymn or a gospel song or something, because, God gives me my talent and I try to turn it back to Him. But I hope people see a guy that has grown. I don't really listen to my music once it's good enough to record. Once I get a sense that, it's good enough to put out, I really don't go back and listen to the records at all. But I hope people can hear growth. I hope they can hear that I've gotten better over the years as a vocalist, as a musician, as a band leader, as a piano player, all that stuff. I'm playing with new vocabulary. I also hope that people go, oh, you're just going to come right over my lane, aren't you? Come on over, sir. Let me just give you that opportunity. I also hope that people go, he's playing repertoire that he wasn't playing 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago. I don't want people to hear my name and go, I know what that band's going to sound like. I don't have to buy a ticket. I've seen them a million times. And you know that what I mean. It's like there's some people where it's great music and there's nothing wrong with their musicianship, but they've kind of been making the same record for the last 20 years. I always want to be growing. I always want to be writing new stuff. I always want to be arranging new things. So I hope that people, when they think of me, they see a guy that's growing in the music and stretching boundaries.
So, Eric, I got to know, if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one jazz show, where are you going?
That's really good. I would love to go to. Oh man, that's hard. But off the top of my head, I think I'd love to go to Chicago to the Plug Nickel and see the Miles Wayne Shorter band. I think that was '65. Honorable mentions would be I'd love to go to the Vanguard and see Train play one song for 35 minutes. I'd love to maybe be out in LA and see the Vintage Headhunters band with Herbie. See Tiger. Maybe the Newport Jazz Festival 1958 or 59. Can't remember when that Duke Ellington show was, when Paul Gonsalves did those 27 choruses of that blues. I think that was in the late 50s, 58, 59. Those are honorable mentions off the top of my head.
Wow, I would love to join you. That's a stellar trip.
Yeah.
So, Eric, if anyone wants to pick up the brand new album, Echoes of Arrival, any of the previous work, catch you guys live, any of the good business, where do they go?
Any place streaming, any place you get your streaming services, but you can always go to the webpage, buy it off the webpage, ericbyrdtrio.com, and I'll autograph it for you and put it in the mail for you.
I love it. I will put all these links in the show notes. Eric, thank you, sir. What a wonderful time talking to you about this music. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in D.C., Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Eric for his time and story. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Down at the church, Friday night at Westminster Church.
Neon Jazz.